welcome to the program. I'm Chris Stafford. On this week's episode, I'm going to be chatting to the American dressage rider Catherine Haddad. Catherine has just returned to the States from Europe, where she had a successful tour with Rowan Riley's 11-year-old Oldenburg mare, Sempre Fidelis. So we'll be catching up with their story and what else Catherine has been doing since we last spoke to her here on The Horse Show. But before we hear from Catherine, we'd like to welcome a new media partner to WiSP Sports. Elaine Buckley is the co-host of the Fair Game podcast, which is based in Dublin, Ireland. And she's here to tell us the story of how the podcast got started and the kind of things they cover on the show. But we'd first like to give a shout out to our sponsors here on The Horse Show, Equestrian Collections, which has just about everything for horse and rider, with some fabulous clearance sales going on right now on Ariat and horse products with up to 70% savings. They have all the leading brands in their fall and winter collections, including apparel, footwear and equipment. So there's really something for everyone, adults and children, and of course horses and ponies. You'll find everything you need at equestriancollections.com. Well, I'm joined now by Elaine Buckley from the Fair Game podcast. She's based in Dublin in Ireland, and we've been watching the podcast, seeing what these girls have been doing over in Ireland, so I thought it would be a chance to hear from Elaine herself how it all got started. So Elaine, welcome to the programme.
Thanks, Chris.
Tell us a little bit about yourself to start off with. I said you're in Dublin's fair city there, so and people will soon realise you've got this lovely Irish accent, so you probably were raised not too far from the fair city.
Yeah, no, I'm Dublin through and through. I'm born here and I've lived here ever since. So yeah, that's where I was born. That's where I grew up, and that's who my favourite Gaelic football team are as well. So yeah, I live in Dublin. I work in TV production over here, so I actually work in sport full time, and then I do the podcasting about sportswomen in my spare time. So the two kind of tie in nicely together on occasion.
So what's your sport then? Your sport of choice, Elaine?
My sports of choice would be myself. I play Gaelic football and hockey. They would also be my two favourites to watch as well.
And now, what about horse racing? Because we know how Ireland loves its racehorses.
Yeah, we've got a really proud tradition of horse racing in this country. I can't say it will be my area of expertise, but you know, we have some really, really famous names in the racing field that come from Ireland, and some really famous women who have had stellar achievements in racing as well. So yeah, it's certainly a proud history we have here. Indeed,
of course. Well, apart from, all your traditions, there's a lot of sports that are happening and growing in Ireland. And, women are really getting on the world stage now in sports, on many different sports, not just those that are traditional in Ireland. And it's so good to see, of course, not least of all, Annalise Murphy, who's currently in the Volvo Ocean Race on Turn the Tide on Plastic. And we, of course, are following them very, very closely. But we want to talk about what you're following closely, what it is that inspired this podcast and what your focus is.
Well, what inspired the podcast was basically back in late 2015. I was listening to an Irish sports podcast that I listen to all the time, every day actually, and I just thought, wouldn't it be great to hear female voices, female presenters talking about female athletes and their sports? And I just wasn't aware of any, so I did a bit of a troll online, and there were very few podcasts of that kind on offer, and certainly none in an exclusively Irish capacity. So that's when I guess I just kind of started to stop giving out about it and instead to do something about it. And sure, why don't I make one myself? A podcast about Irish sports women, featuring the kind of content that I'd like to listen to myself. So in spite of, I do work in television broadcasting, but I had very limited on-air experience myself. So I kind of started doing a bit of initial research into it. And one thing I realised quite quickly was that I couldn't do it by myself to the level that I would like. First of all, because it is kind of a lot of work, but also I would be very, I suppose, team sports oriented, and I needed kind of a counterbalance, someone who was into completely different sports than I am, and that the two of us could come together and work together. So that's when I approached Emily Glenn. Would she like to have a chat about it and see if we could get something off the ground. So we had one meeting, chatted through the idea. We were both very, very passionate about it, and we just decided to go for it. So after toying around with some really, really terrible names, we finally settled on Fair Game, wrote up our programme pitch and took it to a production company and pitched it. And 2 months later, we were releasing our first episode. So it all happened quite quick, from an idea to a conversation to actually having to do it, I suppose.
So when did you actually launch, Elaine? When was your launch date?
So we launched in February 2016.
All right.
So we're just over a year and a half old now.
Right, grand. And now, did you know Emily before this, or someone that you knew about?
I knew her in that very modern way where you say, I know her from Twitter. I had seen her speak on the... I had seen her speech about women's sports at an event in Dublin called the Web Summit the year before. And also just from following her on Twitter, I knew that she was into running, swimming, triathlon, those kind of sports that wouldn't be necessarily my area of expertise. So yeah, it's a really good counterbalance. We both follow all sports, but certainly we have different areas of expertise.
Well, that's grand. Now, how can we find you, and how often are you broadcasting your podcast?
So at the moment, we are a monthly podcast. So we are available on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Android, on Spotify. If you search just Fair Game, we come up there. And we also are on Twitter at Fair Game Cast, where we provide kind of a constant stream of updates on everything that's happening in women's sports in Ireland, and also drawing on international events as well, because it's really important for us to kind of be on top of what's going on worldwide, because we can really take our cues from what countries like Australia and America are doing. So we kind of try to bring that all together on our Twitter account, which is constantly updated with the latest news, views and opinions. And then the podcast comes out on a monthly basis.
Right, so you're basically promoting Irish women in sport then, no matter where they are and no matter what sport they're in. And do you focus just on the interviews, or do you bring in some pieces of news or break it into segments? Describe what you would say you were aiming for with the podcast and the way it's structured.
So the format of our podcast is long-form interviews, be it a panel with two people or a one-to-one interview, because what we wanted was we were so accustomed, I suppose, to just hearing snippets from Irish sportswomen, and usually when they achieve something big. So when someone wins a world championship or wins an Olympic medal, then you get to hear from them, but you've heard so little in the build-up to that big achievement. It's just kind of a pattern in coverage of women's sports. So we kind of just wanted to have the freedom to just have long conversations with athletes about all of the training that they do, all of the preparation they do, the psychology of it, the physical side of it. We just wanted the time and the freedom to just tease all of that out. So that's why we settled on interview based. We don't cover news on a topical basis on the podcast because we're monthly. We kind of just tend to keep that side online. The podcast is purely interview driven, and on occasion we will take a topic and get athletes in from different fields and different backgrounds to kind of tease out the topic to compare and contrast what it's like for female athletes in Ireland across different sports. So it's largely interview based, and that's something that we've been really passionate to keep going as well.
And where would you like to see this going then over time, Elaine? Have you a plan for this in the medium to long term?
We both really enjoy making the podcast, and we've met some incredible people out of it and established a really nice community side of it as well. So we just want to keep on making them, keep sharing the stories of Irish sportswomen. That's kind of our plan. It's quite a simple one, but one that we're very, very keen to keep driving on.
And obviously having a lot of fun with it too. Yeah,
it's really good fun. I love when we do an episode, say with someone who I wouldn't be very well up on, and the time that you invest kind of researching them and maybe going to see them. And I just really enjoy the research side of it, because you just find out some incredible stuff. I've always found that it's quite hard to be a fan of female athletes, because there's not that much information, readily available. You kind of have to really seek it out. And I just find that really rewarding, and have just discovered some really great athletes that I didn't know about before I started doing this, and some brilliant stories that I wasn't aware of either. So I think it's really, really it's just a really rewarding thing, I find, and trying to go see as many sporting events as possible has become a really important part of it as well, because what you can ascertain from seeing, say, a local club match, reading the match programme, chatting to people on the sidelines, finding out like little bits of kind of oral history in that respect as well. That's one side of it that I really, really enjoy.
Well, I'm sure this is a welcome addition to, as you say, extending the cover of women in sport around the world, and particularly for Irish women, who often are in the shadows, really, because, as you say, there's not as much coverage as there could be. So well done to you for doing this new podcast, and the very best of luck with it, Elaine. And I'm glad you had the time to come on the program and tell us about it, and we enjoy sharing it, and of course, becoming a partner with us here at WiSP Sports.
Yeah, we're very excited about that. We're big fans of what you do, and particularly enjoying the coverage of Annalisa and the Volvo Ocean Race at the moment, because that's one we're watching really, really keenly. So thank you so much for your support. It's for a little podcast like us. It's a really big deal, and we really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, good to talk to you, and thanks for taking the time to come on the program, Elaine.
Cheers, Chris.
Catherine Haddad-Staller is no stranger to Europe. She often makes a trip over to Germany, where she was based for some time. But this year it really paid off when she and the 11-year-old Oldenburg mare Sempre Fidelis won the CDI 3-Star Grand Prix Special in Le Mans, France. It was the first win for this partnership, and came just a month after they had made their big tour debut. So I thought it would be time to catch up with Catherine now that she's back in the US, in New Jersey, before she heads down to Florida for the winter. It's great to catch up with you again. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Chris.
It has been a while, hasn't it? We used to be quite regular at this gig of podcasting to the horse world.
Yes, that's true. We used to talk every couple of months or so. I do remember that when I still lived in Germany, and when I first came back to the United States, we talked quite often.
We did indeed, and of course you are still hopping over to Germany, and you had good reason to go back to Europe with this lovely mare, Sempre Fidelis, that you're winning with now, and we want to talk about her and how she is coming into full bloom now, and putting you back in the limelight, so to speak. But before we talk about her and what you've been doing recently, Catherine, let's just have a snapshot of where you've been in the last year or so, what your program has been like, and the horses that you've had, and what you've really been up to.
Well, I've been up to what I've been up to for the last 30 years, and that's training horses to Grand Prix, and working with my students, and bringing along as many horses as we possibly can between myself and the people who are working for me. In the winters in Florida, we concentrate a lot on our clients. We have a lot of amateur clients that come to train with us and learn from us. I say us because I have 2 professional riders working for me now as well, and a couple others that are joining us this winter season. So they do a lot of training and learn how to train horses on the horses that I have for sale. So we bring those horses. I would not call our stable a sales stable by any means. It's more of a training stable, but I always buy 3 or 4 horses a year, and those horses get trained until they're sold, and that could be a month, it could be 6 months, it could be 3 years. So the girls who work for me professionally get the opportunity to learn to train horses from the ground up to Grand Prix. And so I'm not only training Grand Prix horses, but I'm training Grand Prix trainers, which is my real passion in life. And so for the last year, I have not been showing internationally. I didn't really have the horse that was ready to show or present internationally. So I concentrated on bringing up the horses that I had to a level that I think is sufficient to start international. And also I'm bringing my riders along. So we had, I'm going on a bit, aren't I, Chris? I tend to. We had a great success in August for my breeding and training program, in that one of my professional riders, Anna Stovall, won the Developing Horse Championships at Prix St. George level with a horse that I had not only bred, but she's been in my training program since the day she was born. So that was pretty exciting for all of us, for the whole team. That was the first big highlight of the summer. And then, of course, I went to Europe with Semper Fidelis and started her nationally in Germany. Her first Grand Prix was a national Grand Prix, and then bumped her rather quickly up to international. And as you know, it went quite well.
It certainly did go rather well. And I'm curious though as to how many horses that you now have, Catherine, because you've had a pretty substantial program going now for a number of years, obviously, and you do pop back to Europe whenever you can when you've got something worth showing over there. But in terms of your total program now, how many horses and riders do you have coming through your hands?
Well, I usually have an active stable of 17 to 20. We have 17 stalls in the summer in New Jersey, and we have 20 to 24 in the winter in Florida. So our more active, or actually more busy season is in the winter in Florida. This winter, for instance, we have about 20 horses. Almost half of them are mine. They're horses that I've either purchased or bred that are being prepared for sale. And then the other half are clients' horses. So I have two professional riders who've been with me for now, since I moved back to the United States. One of them's been with me for 5 years, and the other for three or 3.5 years. And I have two new riders coming into the program, so we've expanded a little bit. And then I have 5 clients that come, and they each have 2 horses. So I try to keep the number of horses that my riders are working on small because I want them to do a real quality job as far as training goes. Start to finish, every horse probably gets worked for an hour, and that's with a lot of walk breaks and a lot of walk preparation and then going through a whole program. And of course, that depends on the fitness of the horse and its level and its age. But, I want my girls doing and I say girls because I don't have any men employed at the moment, but I want my girls doing a really quality job from start to finish. And so we really focus on that every day. And the horses get very good care in the stable. So there's that too. So leading up to all of that, we went through a really busy training season in Florida last winter, and some of my clients had great success showing. I had a couple amateur clients who came out and did really well, and my own professional riders did really well in Florida. The one horse that was preparing for developing Prix St. George won a couple classes with Anna Stovall. Michelle Brady won a couple Prix St. George classes. Those were her first Prix St. George classes. And I had, clients from Canada and also the United States who were showing and were quite successful. So I spent most of the winter coaching and training at home. I did not show in Florida last winter, but I was preparing this mare, and I didn't know how long it would take me to get her first to Grand Prix level and then to such a quality that I thought I could show it in public. But we left for Europe the end of May. I took just this mare with me, and Semper Fidelis. I had planned actually to take Belstaff with me as well, but shortly before we left, he had a small injury and I couldn't put him on the plane, so I left him with my girls to train all summer, and they've done a super job on him. So I had Semper Fidelis in Europe from the end of May, and I spent a lot of time working on a lot of very basic stuff with her that needed to be, shall we say, reorganized, like self-carriage and upward riding, elasticity, suppleness, throughness in the transitions. The entire canter work had to be revamped from the beginning to the end because that was the one thing that was really, really difficult with her when I got her. And that is still a work in progress. So when you say that she's coming into full bloom, that's not quite right. She is actually extremely green at what she's doing. And it still shows in her tests sometimes, but she's an extraordinarily talented horse. And as long as I don't overface her with, trying to do something in the show ring that she doesn't already know from training, in other words, taking her out of her routine. If I don't take her out of her routine, she'll go through the test very nicely at this point in time. But I've really just swum to the tip of the iceberg with this horse. And there's a lot more power and energy to come. There's a lot more throughness to come. There's a lot more quality to the gaits. I'm tickled pink that she's doing so well with her first starts, but it's really, she's 11, but the last horse show that she did before I got her was in Denmark in a national show. She did an M class, which is 3rd or 4th level. So this horse in 1 year has come extremely far. And I'm really, really more than thrilled but she's doing as well as she is in the show ring.
I wanted to talk about what she had done before because she is owned, of course, by Rowan O'Reilly, who I think has been supporting you now for over a couple of years, hasn't she? As long as that. And
yes, she has.
And how she came about finding the mare. What was her story before? You mentioned obviously she came from Europe. She's in Oldenburg.
Yes, she's in Oldenburg. She is Sir Donner Hall Veldhit, and she was born in the Oldenburg region and was sold out of Oldenburg. She had done the mare show at Rush Data. She was in the what's called the Brilliant Ring, which means it's the top 20 to 30 mares shown in hand at, I think it's 3 years old. She wasn't particularly highly placed there or anything, but then she was sold to Italy and developed by a Grand Prix rider in Italy, Gloria Colombo. I know her last name is Colombo, and I'm thinking first name, is it Gloria? Oh, I'm going to be really mad if I get that wrong. But Miss Colombo from Italy owned the horse, and her partner was also helping to develop the horse, the man that she's with in Italy. And I do know that they got the horse to FEI level. I think she had been shown in a Prix St. George in Italy. I don't know what the result was. And then the horse was sold, was sent back to Germany to be sold, and the horse went to a very, very reputable stable in Germany, and started to really progress in its training at that stable. But then it was picked up by Andreas Helgstrand and his team, and it went on to Denmark to be developed even further. So at the time that Rowan and I found the horse, we were actually looking for a much younger horse. We wanted to find something 7 or 8 years old that looked like it had potential to go Grand Prix. What we found was the quality of horse that we wanted at the level that we wanted. She was just much older than we wanted because she was 10 when we first saw her. And even Andreas will tell you that she was very much a project when we decided to purchase her. She was not by any means a made Grand Prix horse, although it looked like she would eventually do the test. And she showed from the beginning that she was extraordinarily talented in Piaffe and Passage. And the walk needed development, the canter needed development, the canter in particular, and you'll still see in the show ring, even now, that the canter needs better elasticity and softness in the back and better jump from behind. But all of that has improved so much that I finally dared to show her. Right about August, I started showing her. And the horse is extraordinarily clear in the mind. I don't know if you remember Maximus, my very first international Grand Prix horse.
Of course, yes.
She was wonderful.
Yes.
She has the temperament, the brain, the focus, the concentration, the eagerness, and the willingness of Maximus, which is fabulous because I never had a horse like Maximus since he sadly passed. And she has the athletic ability and the incredible talent for Piaffe and Passage that Cadillac had. And I, in the times that I rode Cadillac, he was such an extraordinary horse. I always wished that he could just focus a little bit more like Maximus was able to do. Maximus was able to focus his full energy on the task at hand, and he loved it. He was totally committed to it. And this mare is the same. So it's almost like I took 2 of my old horses, started, from one end of the diagonal to the other, and they ran into each other at X, and boom, Semper Fidelis was born. So she's extraordinary, and I think she found the right partner. Like a lot of horses do when they're sold into the proper hands, they choose. And when I showed up in Andreas's, and I think I rode her 3 days in a row, she made it clear that she was going to work with me. And so we took her home. Rowan was there, and she watched me ride the horse, and we both agreed that it was a risky purchase to take a horse that was 10 years old, that had was still not ready to go Grand Prix and still had some things that looked dicey and maybe not manageable. There were still things that really needed working on. But, that's been my strong point my whole life, is to be able to develop horses that have either issues or some things, throughness issues that need to be solved, or straightness issues that need to be solved, or regularity problems, things like that. Every horse that I have ever purchased, because I never really had great resources at the tip of my fingers. I always had to buy horses that had some issues that needed solving. And when Rowan and I came across this horse, we both said, wow, if you get that one to go the way everyone wants to see it go, that's going to be amazing. And so far, it's turning out that way. So we're both pretty excited. And Rowan loves this horse. She loves to watch her go. I love this horse. I love to ride her. And I've said this my whole life. I'm going to say it again. It doesn't matter how much money I spend on a horse or my sponsor spends on a horse. If it's a special horse, it's a gift in your life. And this is a horse that is a generous gift. She gives every day. She's fabulous to ride. She's fabulous to train. And she's being just as generous going down the center line. So it's really an exciting prospect for me.
Well, now she's back in the States, of course, having racked up a win and some placings there in Europe. Was that meeting your expectations? Did she over-deliver in terms of, obviously, you had high hopes for her and you knew the timing was right to bring her out, so to speak, there. So how did that those performances, what you've brought back, is that horse what you were expecting to bring back or more?
More. I didn't think she would develop as quickly as she has, to be honest. I knew that there were a lot of elasticity and trueness issues with the horse. But again, those are in some ways my specialty. They're the things I've worked on all my life and that I maybe do better than some other riders. So for me, that was, the things I've really concentrated on is the basics of getting the horse supple, of getting her to bend correctly in each direction and be soft through the whole body, get her to swing, get her to step through from behind, get her to carry herself, keep her withers up, relax in the canter, take a longer stride, that kind of thing. She over-delivered. There's no question about it, because as good as you can make something at home, until you can count on the appearance of those positive things in the show ring, you don't know until you've shown a horse a few times as to whether they're going to bring it out for you when you need it. And this mare shines. You take her to a horse show, she just shines. And she shines not because she's jacked up by the environment. She shines because she's focused. And she loves to do her work. And because she is in a different environment, she picks up just a little bit and just makes a show. And she, I have to say, having been in the sport now for a long, long, long time, the horses and riders that I like to watch the most are the ones that are doing truly correct, ridden from behind to the front dressage. Not pulled on, not shortened in the neck, no hand riding, really ridden from the seat forward, up through the withers, through the neck, toward the bit. And I'm so able to ride this mare this way and to do it in the show ring that it's an enormous pleasure for me to go down the center line with her. And as I said, it's really, she's still so green and came through, now 6-7 tests with me. That's the only time this horse has gone Grand Prix is in those 7 tests. And in all 7 tests, she was above 70%. And she had some really high scores and some really good placings. So I'm super excited about the future with her.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have every reason to be excited about her future. So what is the future looking like in the short and medium term? Because, there's always, I imagine still, your team ambitions. You've been so close. You've been on teams. You've been so close. And a lot of people will remember Winnemaro and how close you got to the last WEG or the previous WEG. And those sort of career ambitions, I imagine, are still there on the horizon. You never lose sight of those, Catherine, do you?
You know what? You do and you don't. I'm 53 years old. I have one international.
No one's going to believe that.
I am. I'm 53 years old. I've won numerous international competitions. I've shown at Wiesbaden and Aachen and Munich and Hickstead and Stockholm and Paris and Lyon, and really done some of the best horse shows in the world and held my own up until this point on horses that really probably weren't quite good enough to be competing with the top horses in the world. Finally, I'm sitting on one that is. And to be honest with you, I really don't care. Yes, if I made a team, it would be the creme de la creme. Do I care about it as much as I used to? The answer to that is no. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop trying. What I put the emphasis on now is how much I enjoy riding this horse. I love riding her every single day. She is she is so made for me that in the stable, I call her my pants. I say to my groom, bring me my pants. Because when I put my right leg over her, it's like stepping into my favorite pair of blue jeans. And I know that this feeling is just as good for her. I can tell by the expression on her face. I can tell by the improvement in her movement. I can tell by the relaxation and elasticity that's coming into her work. The horse loves this partnership. And I love this partnership. And that is absolutely the most important thing. So if you ask me, would I love to achieve some, a team position or a World Cup with this horse? Absolutely. But I would not trade that for the feeling of riding her every day.
Again, it comes back to you being the trainer first, the rider, the trainer first, and the competition is the icing on the cake, really.
Absolutely. And for me, I've always said this, and I'll still say this, the reason I compete is to better myself, so that what I do achieve at home, the feeling that I get at home, I want to be able to carry that over to the show ring. And I think I can finally do it with this horse. It's been a long road. It's been many, many years, but I now have a horse that I think I can ride in the show ring the way I train. And that is really from behind, through the back, to the bit, and self-carriage with elasticity, harmony, and I hope a lot of beauty.
There's a message in there, right there, Catherine, to riders, young riders who are very competition-oriented these days. A lot of peer pressure, a lot of expectations on them. I don't know whether this is an American culture, if you found that this is just as prevalent in Europe, whether it's a generational thing, that the competition aspect of their riding takes over from the training and the importance of training and all the things that you were just saying about, what you enjoy, what you get out of the sport now. And it shifted your priorities over time. And I can imagine, back in the 20s, you wanted to be that Grand Prix rider who was, in the selectors' eyes. But do you find that the culture has shifted?
Well, I don't think the culture has shifted. I think that is an element of the sport that exists everywhere. We measure success by the show ring. We don't ever measure success by our training achievements. And I have probably been an exception to that rule all along, because it's always been important to me to train my own horses, to learn more and more about training, to understand how to get a horse from the basic level to the pre-level. Those have always been the most important things for me. I mean, I started my international show ring career actually very late. I was 40 the first time that I started showing seriously internationally. So that's pretty late to get started on something like that. Most people, some of these young riders start at 16 or 20 or 21. And of course, I see a lot of them, and their parents are into it, and they want their kids to win. That's typical, I think, of anyone in the world who gets involved in sport. You don't compete in sport to lose. You compete in sport to win. So, if they can buy a better horse, if they can get a better trainer involved, and they can put their kid on, and their kid can do better each time, that's a very, very important and key way to measure success for parents and also for the kids who are involved themselves. I don't see that as wrong by any means, but I don't think it's very hard for me to watch people win in the show ring who have not learned the basics of good riding and who are not riding basically well. And we do see that sometimes. We do see some people who've kind of purchased their success. You see it at all levels of the sport. You don't see it very often in Olympic sport anymore. It used to be that someone could go out and buy a made horse and, jump right in the show ring with it and at least fake their way through the Grand Prix enough to get their, I'm thinking back in the 80s and 90s, to get their 64, 65, 66, whatever. You don't see it very much anymore. I mean, the sport has become so developed and so selective at the higher end that most people who are riding and competing at that level have to really understand how to ride a horse. You can't fake it anymore. So that's gone. But at many other levels in the sport, the smaller horse shows, smaller circuits, you see a lot. But that's typical around the world. It's not exclusive to the United States by any means.
Well, that's good to hear. And as you say, never lose sight of one of the most important aspects of being with horses is the horsemanship, and that happens off the horse as much as on the horse. And I know you've been very adamant about your principles, and that's what makes you a good trainer. And I think it's an example really to young people as well, Catherine. So keep on doing what you're doing, and tell us what you're going to do with this mare in Florida.
I'm going to keep her happy. That's what I'm going to do.
Of course you're going to keep her happy.
I'm going to keep her happy. It has to be the goal of every trainer, and that doesn't mean that you can't put pressure on a horse. God knows I've put pressure on horses over the years. But the more you understand about training and the more that you understand how to do it, I just said to my husband this morning, I said, I may not have a 20-year-old body anymore, but I'm so much smarter than I was when I was 20 that I can still really train a horse. In fact, I can train a horse better now than I ever could in any other time in my life. And good training is always geared toward maximum output, which the horse wants to do. He wants to be your willing dance partner. So my goal this winter for this mare is to keep her happy. And I learned a lot about her this summer. She's not so easy to travel with. I now have a lot more better idea how to get her from point A to point B when I need to move her around. There are certain things that she really likes. She prefers straw bedding over shavings, which is a problem in Florida because straw is $25 a bale, as we all know. But I think she might be getting spoiled with straw bedding this winter in Florida. She hates flies and insects. We're going to be doing something about that too. She wants her daily training to be in a certain way, and I know now how she best builds muscle and how she best stays elastic, and what training program I need to use to maintain that and amplify it with her. So I'll be following that. And because I know now after a year of having her that she doesn't travel all that well, I'm not planning any horse shows immediately in Florida. She gets out of quarantine beginning of December, and I'm going to see how she feels. And I'm going to take my time with her and, do a slow build up to the beginning of the year over 3 weeks and see how she feels. And then I may plan a horse show with her. But, clearly I'm going to show her once or twice in Florida, maybe 3 times. I don't know yet. I don't have a schedule planned yet with her.
Okay, give her time, keep her happy. Now, what keeps you happy when it comes to fitness these days? Then, since you brought up the topic of your age, and that you are a better trainer now, it's all about physical, output, maximum, minimum effort for maximum output, all of that sort of things. What are you doing? Are you doing Pilates, yoga, running? What are you doing?
Pilates. I have a Pilates reformer that I use. I have one in Florida and one in New Jersey. So wherever I'm stationed.
Oh, I envy you.
Yeah, I use the reformer, and the one with the stretchy bands. It doesn't have the heavy springs on it. And I find for a pelvic workout, a pelvic and abdominal workout, it's really the best thing that I can do. It keeps me supple and it makes me strong. And I also try to do TRX 2 or 3 times a week because it keeps my foundation strong. I think that you have to do weight-bearing exercise if you're going to stay fit for your core. And what I have given up on over the years is extreme abdominal workouts because I found it ended up straining my lower back too much. So now I do a really balanced, abdominal lower back, quadricep and buttock workout, that whole core all the same without an overemphasis on abdominals. That helps. And cardiovascularly, you're going to laugh at this, but I stay fit through chanting. And to be honest with you, I think keeping your brain fit is just as important as keeping your body fit. We all talk about physical fitness, but mental fitness is really, really important. Mental, spiritual, balance, and, knowing what your goals are when you wake up in the morning and having a really low-key, just non-stress attitude toward the training is very, very helpful.
Great advice. I think you're absolutely right about mental attitude too, because that can go a long way towards your approach to everything you do physically.
Well, it affects your physical being. Talking to a person who's had 2 major back injuries in her life, your emotional state and your mental state affects your physical being. So you need to work on that as much as you need to work on your physical state. But that's the same with the horses. It's absolutely the same with the horses. If you're going to train a horse's body, you've got to keep his mind relaxed. Because if you make the mind of the horse tense, he's going to hurt his body. That's just the bottom line. So, and unfortunately, when we pursue things like teams and World Cups and stuff like that, we a lot of times end up putting too much pressure on our horses. And I'm not saying that's wrong. If you're going to compete at the top level of the sport, you have to be able to put pressure on your horse. But what I learned from Mr. Schultheis early on, and I still stand by it today, is that you can put physical pressure on a horse without putting mental pressure on a horse. And if you learn to do that, then you can be very successful in taking a horse up through the levels.
Well, that's great advice, Catherine. I think we should leave it right there, because that's a takeaway for riders listening to the show. And always good to hear from you, Catherine. It's great to catch up again after all this time and know that you've got such a nice horse to ride. My goodness, what a lucky girl you are.
Yes, I'm very, very lucky, and I cannot be grateful enough, and I cannot thank Rowan O'Reilly enough for this opportunity, because sitting on this horse is really what I've dreamed of doing my whole life. So it's really exciting for me.
Fabulous, fabulous. All right, you're getting the most out of the sport, it's clearly. And as I said, lovely to catch up with you. So good luck with her and, everything else you're doing around the sport. And, thanks for taking the time to come on the program. Good to hear from you.
Thank you, Chris. I hope we talk again soon.
And that's our show for this week. Don't forget you can download this podcast from the iTunes podcast store to any podcast app. We're on Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and of course on iTunes. And if you enjoy other sports for women from anywhere around the world, we've got it covered here at wispsports.com, where you'll find a lot more conversations on our podcasts. We have over 700 episodes and more than 30 unique shows, as well as articles, blogs, and videos. That's all at wispsports.com. And you can also join in the conversation by emailing us here at info@wispsports.com and following us on social media at wispsports. If you have any comments or questions, you can also post them on our Facebook page too. Just look for Wisp Sports. Until the next time, thank you for listening.